The 2023 NFL Draft was absolutely loaded with talent. Multiple amazing players went in the first round, including Jahmyr Gibbs, who is arguably the best running back in the league right now. But Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't selected until the 12th overall pick. That means 11 players heard their names called before him. Some have become stars, some have become solid starters, and some haven't lived up to their expectations, being a top 11 pick. So today, we're going through all 11 players drafted before Jahmyr Gibbs and seeing what happened to them. Let's start with the first overall pick. The Carolina Panthers had the first overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, and they used on Alabama quarterback Bryce Young. Young was one of the most highly regarded quarterbacks in the class. He had won the Heisman Trophy at Alabama and was praised for his accuracy, intelligence, pocket awareness, and ability to make good plays. Carolina clearly believed they had found their franchise quarterback. Unfortunately, his rookie season was pretty rough. Young threw for just 2,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, while being sacked 62 times. The Panthers finished with only 2 wins, and things didn't immediately get better. Young was even benched during the 2024 season. But after returning to the starting lineup, he began to look much more comfortable. In 2025, Young had his best season yet, throwing for over 3,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. Carolina also made the playoffs. So while Young hasn't become the superstar people expected from the first overall pick, he's shown enough improvement to keep hope alive. He still has to prove he's a franchise quarterback, but he's definitely not the hopeless situation it looked like after his rookie season. And with the pick right after Bryce Young was selected, the Houston Texans selected C.J. Stroud. And unlike Young, Stroud immediately looked like he belonged in the NFL. As a rookie, Stroud threw for over 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions. He also led Houston to the playoffs and won Offensive Rookie of the Year. It was one of the best rookie quarterback seasons we've seen in recent years. Since then, Stroud has had some ups and downs, but he's still shown the qualities of a franchise quarterback. He's accurate, calm under pressure, and has the arm talent to make difficult throws. Houston clearly believes they have their quarterback of the future, and that's exactly what you want when you spend the second overall pick on a quarterback. The Texans weren't done after taking Stroud. They traded up to the third overall pick and selected Alabama edge rusher Will Anderson Jr. Anderson was one of the best defensive players in college football, so expectations were massive. He had a solid rookie season with the 7 sacks. Then he improved to 11 sacks in 2024. And in 2025, he took another step forward with 12 sacks. Throughout his first 3 seasons, Anderson has already recorded 30 sacks. He's become one of the most important players on Houston's defense, and looks like the franchise pass rusher they were hoping to get. At number 4, the Indianapolis Colts selected Anthony Richardson. And Richardson might have been the most ridiculous physical talent of any quarterback in this draft. He has a huge arm, incredible athleticism, and can run like a running back. But there's always one major question. Could he stay healthy and develop as a passer? Unfortunately, injuries have made that extremely difficult. Richardson only played 4 games as a rookie. He returned in 2024 but struggled with accuracy and consistency, completing just 47% of his passes. Then in 2025, he appeared in only 2 games. The talent is still there, but the Colts haven't gotten nearly enough from their 4th overall pick. It's very difficult to evaluate him when he simply hasn't been on the field enough. Daniel Jones just seems like the better option right now. At number 5, the Seattle Seahawks selected Illinois cornerback Devon Witherspoon. And Witherspoon immediately made an impact. As a rookie, he recorded 71 tackles, 3 sacks, 16 passes defended, and even returned an interception 97 yards for a touchdown. He followed that up with another strong season in 2024. And while injuries limited him in 2025, he still made an impact when he was on the field. Witherspoon became one of the most important young players on Seattle's defense. He hasn't necessarily become the absolute shutdown corner some people expected, but he's been a very good player. For a 5th overall pick, Seattle has to be happy with what they've gotten. At number 6, the Arizona Cardinals selected Ohio State offensive tackle Paris Johnson Jr. And while offensive linemen don't always get the attention of quarterbacks or skill players, Johnson has quietly become one of the most dependable players from his class. He immediately became a starter and has continued to be an important part of Arizona's offensive line. He's been reliable, physical, and has shown the potential to be a long-term cornerstone for the Cardinals. He hasn't necessarily become one of the best tackles in the NFL yet, but that's not exactly a requirement for being a successful pick. Arizona needed a starting tackle who could be there for years, and that's exactly what they got. At number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders selected Texas Tech edge rusher Tyree Wilson. And coming into the league, the physical tools were obvious. Wilson is massive, athletic, and incredibly explosive. The Raiders were hoping they found their next dominant pass rusher. Unfortunately, the production hasn't really matched the potential. Wilson recorded just 3 sacks as a rookie, 4.5 in 2024 and 4 in 2025. That's only 12 sacks through 3 seasons. It's not terrible, but when you're the 7th overall pick, you expect much more. Wilson still has time to turn things around, but so far he hasn't become the defensive cornerstone the Raiders hoped for. At number 8, the Atlanta Falcons selected Texas running back Bijan Robinson. There are already massive expectations surrounding Robinson coming into the league. And considering the Atlanta Falcons used such a high pick on a running back, he needed to be special. And he has been. Robinson has become one of the most dangerous running backs in the NFL. He's an explosive runner, an excellent receiver, and one of the most difficult players in the league to tackle. His production has continued to increase every season, and he's already established himself as one of the best all-around running backs in football. The Falcons may have had some questions about using the 8th overall pick on a running back, but it's hard to argue with the player they got. Now at number 9, the Philadelphia Eagles selected Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter. And this might be one of the biggest steals of the entire first round. Carter was considered one of the most talented players in the entire draft, and somehow he fell all the way to Philadelphia. He immediately became an important part of one of the NFL's best defensive lines. Carter's combination of strength, explosiveness, and ability to generate pressure from the interior makes him extremely difficult to block. He's already established himself as one of the best young defensive tackles in football. In Philadelphia, getting that kind of player at number 9 is a massive win. At number 10, the Chicago Bears selected Tennessee offensive tackle Darnell Wright. Wright immediately became a starter for Chicago and has remained a consistent part of their offensive line. He started essentially every game since he's been available. He hasn't become one of the biggest names at offensive tackle, but he's been a solid starter and continues to develop. And honestly, it's pretty valuable. When you draft an offensive lineman in the top 10, you want someone who can stay on the field and give you quality production for years. That's what Wright has done so far. And finally, we have the player selected immediately before Jahmyr Gibbs. At number 11, the Tennessee Titans selected Northwestern offensive lineman Peter Skoronski. Skoronski was considered one of the safest offensive linemen in the draft. There were questions about whether he'd play tackle or guard in the NFL, but Tennessee eventually settled him at guard, and it has definitely worked. Skoronski has become a reliable starter and one of the better young guards in the league. He's also been incredibly durable, starting every game he's played throughout his first 3 seasons. The Titans clearly believe he's a major part of their future, and they showed that by giving him a massive contract extension heading into 2026. So he might not be a household name, he's been exactly what Tennessee needed. So what did happen to the 11 players drafted before Jahmyr Gibbs? Well, when you look at this group, there's actually a pretty clear divide. You have guys who have already become legitimate stars. Then you have several players who have become solid starters. And then you have players whose stories are still being written. And then there's Jahmyr Gibbs, the 12th overall pick. Detroit took a running back despite already having David Montgomery, and at the time, plenty of people questioned the decision. But Gibbs has quickly shown why Detroit believed he was worth such a high pick. He's become one of the most explosive offensive weapons in football, and one of the most productive players from his entire draft class. And that's what makes the 2023 draft so interesting. There are already multiple stars at the top of this class, but there are still plenty of questions that can completely change how we look back at these players 5 or 10 years from now. Bryce Young could become a franchise quarterback. Anthony Richardson could finally stay healthy and reach his full potential. Tyree Wilson could finally turn his physical tools into production. And despite being picked 12th overall, and second out of his position, I think we can all agree that Jahmyr Gibbs has been a standout from this draft class. And we hope that he has a long, successful career and years of success to come.